Hi, I'm sitting here with Mike Butcher, editor-at-large of TechCrunch. Thank you very much for joining us.
Very kind, thank you.
So you were just on stage talking about the community and disinformation in the crypto environment.
Yeah, we're all familiar with now the amount of scams that are going on in ICO. The Wall Street Journal did a big study, and out of almost 1,500 ICOs, found about a fifth to a quarter of them had hugely problematic, have white papers with people that didn't exist, copied information from other ICOs. There's that going on. Then there's people, scammers using celebrities like Richard Branson to scam people. And what my point is that it takes a village, as it were, as the phrase goes, to actually root out all of these bad actors in the space. Mm. And you can't just be in the blockchain and cryptocurrency world and assume that someone else is going to sort it out. Because what will happen eventually is that that someone will probably end up being a very big, slow-moving regulator with a bunch of bad ideas and no knowledge of the industry. And so actually I think it's beholden on everybody acting in this world to now start to promote the good actors in the space and de-promote and de-emphasize and try and get rid of the bad actors. And that means things like promoting the legitimate media in the space, the media that has a separation between advertising and editorial. It means that doesn't blur the lines between advertising and editorial. That's super important. It's getting away from the payola side of things that are going on, and it also means really actually engaging with all of the people who are trying to turn this into a big mainstream industry, not only technical industry, but also finance as well. And the financial world obviously is absolutely going to be part of this, the mainstream financial world, and there's a whole piece of work to be done there as well.
There's a whole different kind of perspective over there from what cryptocurrency is, and one of our previous guests here had a little bit of a crypto brawl, as they kind of said, at the Millen Institute. So yeah, it's interesting to see, with the finance world kind of having one perception, trying to trust or trying to take over their stake and protect their kind of area of influence. Do you think we should be working more with them, or do you think we should actually be trying to actually fight them over?
Well, you've got to remember that even though the traditional banking industry and the finance industry has had huge problems, let's face it, we're all pretty cynical after the bank collapse in banking, 2008, the recession. You've got to also remember that you're talking about hundreds of years of understanding about how finance operates. Now, that doesn't mean to say we can't move to a new world, but there are things such as how we protect consumers, how we protect the citizen and the individual from bad actors that are worth bringing into this world as well.
Absolutely.
And so, and I think, let's face it, you've got to kind of think about how this stuff goes mainstream, and it won't go mainstream unless you do get the current mainstream actors, the banks, regulators, governments, more involved, but involved in such a way as to do the right thing, to allow the technology to flourish. Ultimately, let's be honest, governments aren't super huge fans of the banking industry either. Clinton famously, I'm talking about Bill Clinton famously was asked many years ago if he had another life, what would he come back as? And he said a government bond trader, because government bond traders took down governments. And so there's not huge amounts of love lost for those guys in that world as well.
Definitely,
but I think it's worth people in blockchain thinking about the democratic institutions that they should be supporting in order for chaos not to reign. There's perhaps a little bit too close a relationship between the alt-right and some cryptocurrencies, I think, which is not good for democratic institutions.
I agree.
And I'm a fan of democracy. Sorry, and I think those, requiring those checks and balances is incredibly important for stability.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people forget, governments are not just there to make life difficult. Where they came from was actually to protect the rights of individuals, property rights or human rights, and provide, public services.
Absolutely, at those highest levels, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so you were talking a little bit earlier about kind of like a community policing almost, or a community policy where we would be looking after one another.
What I mean is, I just think if you want this stuff to succeed and you want it to go mainstream, then you should get involved in the right solutions. You shouldn't just sit back and watch scams take place and not doing anything about it, or not call them out. You should call them out. You should emphasize the best actors in the space. You should promote the media which separates advertising from editorial.
Absolutely.
Has a Chinese wall, and you should be part of the project. You should be part of the project. Don't just continue on your way. And I think it's if you don't do that, then what you'll end up with is nothing will really be adopted. This I don't think that just saying it will become mainstream makes it happen. You have to be part of the project.
There's a lot going on right now in Europe about regulation.
Yeah.
Not only was the EU blockchain partnership signed by 22 European countries, but they've also just the recent EU Observatory and Forum on blockchain regulation.
Yeah.
Which is, personally, I think that's an exciting piece of news. It shows the regulator actually wants to listen to the community, exactly as you said, not just put in something that can create chaos and limit innovation.
Yeah.
So do you think that we should be focusing more on community policing, or sorry, to use another word, community overwatching each other, or should we be trying to work more of our energy into working with regulators to get that kind of policy written down?
Well, the simple answer is both. I think that absolutely, it's a great idea to engage with regulators. I think the EU's move for the observatory is a very good one. It's very welcomed. It's a great opportunity for people in blockchain and crypto to engage at the highest levels, especially with the EU. For whether the UK is leaving or not, and by the way, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
It's really important that the industry engages at those levels. But at the same time, it's also beholden, as I said before, for everyone to promote the good actors in the space and to make sure that the bad actors don't win. And I think if everyone could remember those and remember what's at stake, if they don't do that, then I think everyone will win.
How would you tell some of our viewers, how would you say to call out or to actually identify these bad companies? Like, how would they go around to tell their kind of
Well, I think it's
network?
often very difficult for companies to call out other companies. There's all sorts of huge legal ramifications. Simplest thing to do is to promote the best people you can find in the industry. Push the best people you can find, push each other. In the famous phrase, the rising tide lifts all boats. And if you're part of that rising tide, then you will be part of the solution. The simplest way for good actors in the space is to flock together and support each other and tune out the bad actors as much as possible. I think generally speaking, you'll tend to find that those guys are pretty obvious. So that's what I'm saying.
I mean, it rings a lot with other words we've heard here today about building a community. What cryptocurrency really is, or what blockchain really is about building a community that helps the community, not just helps individuals. That is kind of moving away from the traditional sense of what a business is all about helping the individuals that run the business.
Yeah, if you want to have a real new revolution in an industry, then let's do business which is different to the old version of business. The old version of business is, look after yourself and forget about everybody else. Whereas I think actually we can do a new kind of business here, which is ultimately much more collaborative, helps everybody, and is radically different in that sense, rather than just being purely selfish, effectively.
So, Mike,
Right.
I have one last question for you before
okay.
we finish off.
Here we go.
That is, you are the man of the hour usually.
Oh, don't think so.
But given BlockShow, we're now on the first day. We're almost rounding it up, and I think everyone is getting quite excited for a night of networking. What are things that you have experienced or you've heard that you've gotten really excited about today?
I think what's interesting about this event is that it's bringing together lots of different actors in the space. You've got big corporate enterprises here. I was running a panel with SAP and Oracle on it, as well as investors.
Fantastic, yeah.
So you've got investors, you've got entrepreneurs, you've got corporates, and you've got people involved in policy making as well. So it's actually really interesting. There's actually sort of a huge variety of people to speak to. So I'm certainly looking forward to networking, as you say, just this evening.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.